On the night of my grandfather's funeral, I carried a stone tablet to guide the way, afraid to look back, because behind me were 8 evil spirits carrying coffins. Chapter 1. Ghost Carrying Coffin. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. I am a coffin bearer, a little known mysterious profession. As the saying goes, life, aging, illness, and death are the safety of the earth. In the past decade, my footprints have spread throughout the north and south of the Yangtze River, and I can count countless coffins I have seen, including the auspicious and longevity coffins, the yin and yang coffins, the mother and son coffins, and the hanging coffins. And hanging coffins when dealing with dead people, I always see many strange events. And what truly unforgettable to me is the 8 ghosts carrying the coffin when my grandfather died. My name is Zhang Jiuyang. I was born in the year of Ringshu, Gingshu, Bingshu, and Wushu. I have the 8 characters of pure yang, which are the heavenly stem and earthly branch. Therefore, my grandfather named me Zhang Jiuyang. Because my grandfather said that my destiny is 9, he changed my name to Zhang Jiuyang. That year, my grandfather was already in his 80s, and he had been a coffin-lifting craftsman for a full 50.9 years by pinching his fingers. But not long ago, my grandfather suddenly fell ill with a strange illness, and his limbs were weak and unable to move. Grandpa's illness is both strange and painful, so he makes a mournful cry in pain every midnight. At this moment, my heart wrenches. What kind of pain did a man who broke his finger without frowning go through that way? But Grandpa doesn't allow me to enter his room, and I have no choice. Grandpa's illness lasted for several months, and I am also speculating whether this is the rumored 5 drawbacks and 3 deficiencies. Afterwards, Grandpa's health deteriorated and he became confused and disoriented. He only stays quiet all night until the 15th day of the lunar calendar every month. Strangely, the next morning, I will definitely find a pair of black paper shoes in my grandfather's room. Half a year has passed, and my family has gained a total of 7 pairs of paper shoes. And on each pair of paper shoes, there is a red uppercase number, which is very strange from 1 to 7. I dare not ask why. My whole body is shrouded in a huge sadness, because I can feel that my grandfather's time is running out. And I am also prepared to bid farewell to my grandfather. In this way, Grandpa passed through another new year in a daze. That day, my grandfather called me to the bed again and asked me what day it was. After tomorrow is Yuanshao, filled round balls made of glutinous rice. Flour for lantern festival. I said. What about the solar calendar? Grandpa asked again. I looked at my phone and said, today happens to be February. February. Is Yuanshao, filled round balls made of glutinous rice. Flour for lantern festival, the 2nd day of February in the Gregorian calendar. Grandpa's eyes suddenly sparkled with excitement. It's here, finally it's here. What time is it? I'm puzzled. 60 years ago, on the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month, the dragon looked up. Grandpa smiled. Grandpa, the dragon's head is in the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar, I reminded. Grandpa's eyes dimmed and he said, I know, but I can't wait for that day. The last burden will be on you. I was puzzled in my heart, and before I could even ask, my grandfather suddenly said. Tomorrow noon, when you mourn your relatives and friends, just say, I passed away. I was stunned and said, Grandpa, what do you mean by this? You just do it, and I'll tell you exactly why. Grandpa waved his hand and fell asleep again. I dare not ask too much, perhaps my grandfather has already sensed it. My heart was heavy, although I was prepared, I couldn't help feeling sad. I had some insomnia that night and didn't sleep until midnight. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly I heard voices coming from my grandfather's room. These voices were loud and small, and I couldn't hear what was being said clearly. I wanted to get up and go to my grandfather's room, but I couldn't move no matter what. Until the second half of the night, the sound gradually subsided, and then I fell asleep again in a daze. The next day before dawn, I fainted and sat up. I got up and rushed into my grandfather's room, only to be surprised to find another pair of paper shoes in his room. However, these paper shoes are yellow and have an 8 written on them in cinnabar. "Grandpa, what's going on?" I asked. Grandpa saw me come in and patted the edge of the bed for me to sit down. "Xiaojiu, it's time for me to leave." As soon as my eyes turned red, tears flowed down my face. "Child, after I die, there are 3 things you must remember, you hear me clearly." Grandpa's voice suddenly became a bit firm. I quickly nodded and asked Grandpa what 3 things were. "The first thing is, there will be many people coming to mourn the day after tomorrow. We just don't accept any gifts, we don't accept anything. After lunch, let everyone leave. Do you understand?" I quickly nodded and said, "I understand." "The second thing is, tomorrow night at exactly 12 o'clock, you go dig out the stone tablet at the village entrance, and then transport it to the street for someone to carve it into a tombstone for me. Then transport it back overnight, remember not to see the sun." "Ah. How can this work?" I was a bit embarrassed. "Remember. When digging a monument, try to avoid people as much as possible. During this process, no matter what you see under the monument, don't meddle, otherwise it can easily cause huge variables." Although I was puzzled, I didn't ask much and could only reluctantly agree. "Also, I'm going to have a funeral on the night of February 2nd. Find a trustworthy friend and make sure to use the 8 characters for Yang to carry a stone tablet with you. Keep walking west when you leave the door, remember, wherever the stone tablet falls, bury me." I nodded and my grandfather said, "When I'm buried, don't let anyone be present, except for your friend." "Grandpa, this is difficult to handle. The 8 immortals, coffin bearers, are all present," I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. When did I say I wanted the 8 immortals to carry the coffin? Not looking for someone. How can we do that? I can't carry it either. I was in a dilemma. Grandpa suddenly gave a strange smile. "The town steel leads the way, the 8 ghosts carry coffins and land them into graves, bringing great blessings to the sky." I was stunned for a moment, so shocked that I couldn't speak. Grandpa continued, "The third thing is, after I die, you go to the city to run some shops. If someone asks you for help, you must remember that no matter how much money others give, you cannot agree. Your first customer must be surnamed Long." I nodded awkwardly, feeling a bit indigestible. Suddenly, Grandpa sat up and shouted loudly, "Do you remember? Remember, remember." I was startled and quickly said. Grandpa smiled. "Grandpa, why did you do this? Just to make me prosperous? I don't understand. The secret cannot be revealed. Follow my instructions and you will understand. Also, remember, when I go to the funeral, you just need to walk. No matter what you hear, you must not turn back to look, understand?" "Oh, I got it." Grandpa sighed and then gave me a reluctant look before slowly closing his eyes. "Grandpa," I quickly helped my grandfather with my hands, but when I touched his skin, I was completely stunned. Because Grandpa's body was icy cold and extremely stiff. "Grandpa, he has been dead for a long time." My hands and feet instantly became cold. Who was that talking to me just now? Before he could fully recover, the 8 pairs of paper shoes piled up in the corner suddenly burst into flames with a loud bang. Chapter 2. 100 Tigers Blooming and Death Proverbs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I was startled by this eerie scene. Before I could recover, 8 pairs of paper shoes quickly burned clean, leaving only a pile of ashes. In the room, a gust of dark wind suddenly blew up, wreaking havoc before blowing out through the window. I looked at the ashes on the ground and didn't come to my senses for a long time. I know, something was in the room just now, but it has already left. I quickly took out my shade-seeking umbrella, and the light shone on my grandfather, which surprised me. Because my grandfather's death has exceeded 6 hours. A layer of cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Taking a deep breath, I quickly calmed down. Looking at my grandfather's peaceful face, I couldn't help feeling sad and started crying again. As early as half a year ago, I could tell that my grandfather's face was lifeless. At that time, I knew that my grandfather's birthday had already arrived, but I didn't understand how he was holding on. The purpose is for this moment, he persisted until 60 years, a whole year. What exactly is it for? To calm down one's emotions, there is a more important thing to do right now, which is to find a pseudonymous body as my grandfather mentioned. This kind of person is already rare. Where will they go for a while? Grandpa has given me a big problem. I have no choice but to mourn first. Just as I finished making the call, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, and the other person's voice was very magnetic. They said, "Young master, it's a sad day, but it's a change." Then they hung up the phone. It was a strange person, but I didn't pay much attention, but just half an hour later, an off-road vehicle drove at lightning speed to my front door. The car door opened and a robust young man with dark skin and round eyes walked down, with a fierce scar on his face. I was shocked in my heart. This person had a red light on his head, which was as red as blood, and he was making a fierce aura towards Hua Gai. This person has killed people. He walked towards me as soon as he got off the car and called out, "Young master." I immediately recognized that it was the person on the phone just now. "I want to go in and see fourth master," he said. Without waiting for me to speak, he stepped into the main room, but just as he crossed the threshold, a dark wind suddenly blew in the room, with a faint roar of a tiger. I was shocked to see him enter the room and quickly followed him up. Just as I was about to ask, this person took a step back and knelt down 3 feet away from the bed with a thud. "Fourth master, Tiger has come to kowtow to you." Speaking, there were 9 loud noises. I was so surprised that I couldn't speak. Kneeling 3 times and kowtowing 9 times was an ancient imperial ritual that has been passed down to this day. Only blood and flesh close relatives can kowtow like this. What is he doing as an outsider? But I can see from his behavior that he clearly knows the rules. 9 kowtows, 9 muffled sounds, and when he stood up, his forehead was already flushed. "Fourth master, you've finished knocking your head. Whether you're leaving or leaving, let me tell you." As soon as the words fell, a gust of wind blew over the curtain on Grandpa's bed and a letter fell down. "Is it really Grandpa?" I am surprised. Taking a deep breath, before I could bend down, Huzi had already picked up the letter and respectfully handed it to me. Opening the envelope, I was surprised to find that there was yellow paper inside but no words. Just as I was surprised, the yellow paper suddenly and slowly bled, and the red color spread on the paper, gradually forming a word, "Stay." Oh my God, this is actually a blood contract. Great, Fourth Lord's kindness will never be forgotten. From today on, my life belongs to the young master. I will go through fire and water without hesitation. Huzi looked excited, then took a step back and knelt down on one knee in front of me. I was stunned and quickly helped him up. After being stunned for a long time, I gradually understood that this person was obviously arranged by my grandfather. Is he the pseudo-positive constitution I'm looking for? Thinking of this, I quickly asked Huzi's birthday. Disappointed, Huzi not only has a pseudo-young constitution, but also has a rare white tiger bloodthirsty destiny with a purine hit on Chongsha. The white tiger's bloody destiny offends Tai Sui, with a natural murderous aura. This type of person is destined to have 2 types of destiny. Either a natural general who kills enemies on the battlefield, or a life of bloodshed and debt. Apart from these 2 types of destiny, there is nothing else. I see that although the heavenly court is full, Huzi's evil energy is soaring, without any trace of noble aura. Obviously, he is not the former. That means this guy will become a person who kills people and cheats in the future. Is Grandpa letting such a dangerous person follow me? The white tiger has descended into the world, and blood comes from it. It seems that my path is destined to be not peaceful. And I almost lost my life because of this incident. At noon, Huzi went to the street to do some business before returning, and the two of them entered the door one by one. The leader is Li Laifu, a well-known village bully in our village, known as Li Sigu. Li Sigu has a total of 5 brothers, and he ranks 4th, so he is called Li Sigu. Several brothers are not good people, and the boss is a famous developer in the city, considered a celebrity from all over the country. Li Sigu relied on his brothers to run rampant in the village and do all sorts of bad things. Whenever there was anything beneficial, he would sneak in and seize it. The villagers hated this guy, but no one dared to touch them. When my grandfather was alive, he only dared not come to my house to cause trouble. Grandpa just went into mourning today and he came, it's definitely not a good thing. I quickly went out and greeted him with a smile. Uncle Li, why did you come? Li Sigu raised his triangular eyes and glanced into the room. Seeing that the spiritual hall had already been built, he immediately chuckled and walked into the inner room. When did it happen? Li Sigu asked with ill intentions. In the morning, I said. Well, it's time for the old man to live for over 60 years. My heart suddenly ignited, but I could only grit my teeth and endure it. I thought to myself to see what he wanted to do. If it wasn't a big deal, I could just pass it off with good words. Li Sigu didn't beat around the bush either. Your grandfather has been carrying his coffin all his life, and even if he dies, someone will have to carry his coffin. I'll leave this matter to the villagers, don't you have any objections? Li Sigu didn't give me a chance to answer, so he continued, the old man has a high status, so the specifications for carrying coffins naturally need to be a bit higher. I'll give you a discount. It's okay to give you 20,000 yuan, right? With each bite of an old thing, my eyebrows furrowed instantly, and an ordinary person carrying a coffin is usually only a few hundred or even 1,000 people. He speaks for 20,000 yuan, which is clearly extortion. Sorry Uncle Li, Grandpa's coffin has already been lifted by someone, don't bother you, I said coldly. Someone's here, humph, whoever it is, give it back to me. Li Sigu sneered at me. He bullies people, just so direct, always like that. Uncle Li, this has nothing to do with you, right? Little brat, giving face doesn't mean losing face, right? Whatever I say, that's settled. Then I'll beat you to death. I was so angry that I couldn't bear this anger. I said without hesitation, this was originally my family's business, and it's my right to find someone to carry the coffin. Li Sigu sneered and slapped me fiercely in the face with a loud slap. I suddenly felt stars in my eyes, and my left face instantly turned red and swollen. That's not all, Li Sigu grabbed my collar and kept patting my face with his hands. When the old man was around, I didn't dare to touch you. Now that the old man is burping his butt, I'll see who's covering you. You better show me some sense, otherwise I'll kill you. At this moment, I realized what kind of hatred the villagers who had been bullied by him had towards him. In my heart, besides fear, there is more humiliation. At that moment, a furious voice rang out in the yard. Seeking death. Then I saw Huzi rushing in. Who are you? Li Sigu kicked with a raised foot. Before I could react, I heard a click and Li Sigu collapsed straight down, lying on the ground, clutching his arm and screaming in agony. He broke his arm. In an instant. I looked at Huzi in surprise, it was too fierce. Huzi stepped on Li Sigu's arm and twisted it hard, causing Li Sigu to scream in agony. Get lost. With a loud shout, Li Sigu's dog legs trembled with fear and rolled away with a stream of urine. I don't know if it's an illusion, but as soon as Li Sigu went out, I suddenly noticed a strong sense of stillness emanating from him. But before I could take a closer look, the person left. Young master, are you okay? Huzi looked at me with a concerned expression. I swallowed my saliva secretly and said it was okay. Will there be no fatalities, right? I felt drums beating in my heart. Moreover, Li Sigu will definitely retaliate fiercely against me, and I feel a bit blaming Huzi in my heart. Unexpectedly, Huzi said something that surprised me. I'm trying to save him. What does it mean? Dragon coffins travel, live people avoid, evil spirits carry coffins, those who see them will die. After speaking, Huzi gave me a worried look and then went out. Leave me standing there in a daze. To be honest, I didn't quite believe it at that time, it was too mysterious. But I never dreamed that this proverb would soon come to fruition. And it's even more thrilling than I thought, making it unforgettable for me forever. I turned around and quietly looked at my grandfather's body. Grandpa, what do you really want? Can you give me some instructions? I sighed and turned my head. Dead people can't speak. But just as I turned my head, I seemed to notice that my grandfather's expression suddenly changed. My heart tightened. Grandpa, he is actually laughing. Chapter 3. Dead Man Face Trigrams, White-Clothed Woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I quickly turned back. Staring intently at my grandfather's expression, I gradually discovered a strange scene. Grandpa's face is gradually forming a pattern. This is a hexagram. I suddenly came to my senses. This is a simple internal Bagua hexagram, with 2 short and 4 long, corresponding to the position of the Bagua. In the 8 trigrams, Dui is Zay, located in the southwest, indicating wading in water. This hexagram also shows 2 depths and 1 shallowness, which is the second sign of Dragon Dui Xiang in the 8 trigrams and a sign of great calamity. Thinking of Grandpa's instructions and Tiger's advice, my heart feels heavy. After a moment, the hexagram on Grandpa's face disappeared, as if it had never appeared before. I sat in the room for a long time, feeling increasingly restless. As it was getting late, I had no idea about searching for the fake young body. In the end, I gritted my teeth and had to resort to emergency medical treatment. I decided to seek help from the Universal Friends Circle. According to the birth date of the fake young body, I edited a message and sent it to all my classmates and friend circles. However, what surprised me was that before the good news arrived, a strange number from another city came. Are you the grandson of Zhang Sai, who picked the stars with 9 fingers? Which one of you? The phone rang with chattering laughter, making teeth ache, and then spewing out a sentence word by word. 24 funeral routes, people carrying coffins at the Yin Yang ferry. My face changed, this is the jargon of our profession. It is obvious that the other party is also a coffin bearer. What's up? I spoke politely, as the other party had not expressed their intention yet. The old man chuckled and said, "Little doll, have you ever heard of the left cripple from Jiangbei?" I shook my head, indicating that I had never heard of it. It doesn't matter if you haven't heard of it, as long as you know, I'm here to carry your grandfather's coffin. Another one coming to lift the coffin. I immediately declined, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't need it anymore. In theory, if I say no, the other party will definitely give up, but the old man sneered, I'm afraid you can't help it. This coffin, besides us, no one can lift it. The other person's tone was strong and even threatening, and I suddenly became angry. I wanted to say something more, but the other person said, wait for me, and hung up the phone directly. Jiangbei left cripple. I couldn't help but frown. The line of carrying coffins is divided into 2 schools, north and south. The boundary is divided by this Yangtze River. The south of the Yangtze River is the southern school, and the coffin-carrying artisans are called the 8 Immortals. The north of the Yangtze River is the northern school, and the coffin-carrying artisans are another type of name, called Diamond. And Grandpa belongs to the southern school. This matter is quite peculiar. At this moment, WeChat rang, and when you picked it up, it was my high school female classmate Lin Wan who called. This chubby girl chased me in high school but was politely rejected by me. After going to college, she hasn't contacted me much. What are you looking for me for? I forcefully connected to the video. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appeared on the screen. I was stunned for a moment. Is this the chubby girl from Lin Wan? It is said that women have changed 18 times, but Lin Wan's change is also too great. The chubby girl from the beginning suddenly transformed into a beautiful woman. I didn't react for a while, but Lin Wan spoke up first. Little soybean milk, why are you looking for me? Have you changed your mind about me? It's indeed Lin Wan, or that tone. When did I come to see you? I was a bit amused. Seeing my old classmate, my mood improved a bit. Don't admit it. You still have such thin skin. Lin Wan chuckled. I rolled my eyes helplessly and said, don't make a fuss. What are you looking for me for? Why are you posting my birthday all over the world? Lin Wan pouted, but there was a hint of a myriad of charm. I was stunned for a moment, then suddenly jumped up from the chair and said, are you serious? You didn't lie to me, did you? What's wrong, such a big reaction? Lin Wan looked puzzled. Is your birthday the same as what I posted? I asked nervously. Yeah, otherwise why would I call you? Cut, you thought you missed me, making me happy for nothing. But I became excited and said, Lin Wan, where are you now? I need your help, it's urgent. What's up? Lin Wan asked. I didn't hide anything, so I roughly explained my grandfather's situation once. Can you come to my house now? I'll have someone pick you up. I looked at her nervously. You can help, but I have a request, Lin Wan chuckled. What requirements? Hee, you're my boyfriend. My face turned black immediately, but Lin Wan chuckled and said, you're joking, send me the location and I'll be there in an hour. After speaking, I hung up on the video. I breathed a sigh of relief and sent a location message. After checking the time, it's already past 9 o'clock. In just over 2 hours, it's time for midnight. I have to set up a monument at midnight, and there isn't much time left. Thinking of this, I didn't dare to delay and went out with a shovel. Our village has 2 exits, north and south. The village entrance passes through the north entrance, but the stone tablet is located at the south entrance. Although this place is considered the entrance of a village, it is surrounded by wild forests within a few hundred meters, and there is a faint old road that is already covered in green grass, which was abandoned a long time ago. The car drove all the way to the earthen slope of the stone tablet, and when the lights shone, several wild cats suddenly jumped out of the grass, which scared me. In the moonlight, I took out a shovel and took a deep breath, ready to start. But at this moment, in my spare time, I saw a woman standing not far behind the stone tablet. White clothes, long skirts, fluttering like immortals. When I quickly looked up, there was nothing behind the stone tablet. I quickly looked around and there was nothing quiet. I swallowed my saliva secretly, my heart beating. I remember from a young age, this stone tablet was a taboo in the village. When I was a child, I only sneaked over to play, but my grandfather caught me and beat me up. After that, I fell seriously ill for 3 days and 3 nights, and never came again. As for this stone tablet, it is said that in the early years of Yongjing in the Qing dynasty, a rainstorm fell in Longgang County, that is, here, Yunnan province, and many people were drowned when the river mouth burst its dike. The local people suffered unspeakably. The Jinwan Palace was read in the book. Emperor Yongjing, with his heart in his heart, immediately ordered Li Wei, who was then the chief executive, to go to cure the flood. Coincidentally, Li Wei was relieving floods in Yunnan at that time. After the imperial decree was issued, he dared not delay and rushed for a day and a night. He quickly arrived at Longgang County. After some investigation, he decided to send people to dig ditches and channels to divert the flood into the river, which would solve the problem. But soon Li Wei found something unusual. No matter how hard he tried to divert the water, the flood would never recede. Once the water level dropped, rainstorm would come again, even more serious than before. Although Li Wei had not read for a few days, his mind was very good. He ordered a pause in drainage while starting to visit and observe. After a few days, Li Wei discovered that the heavy rain was somewhat peculiar, not continuous, but continuous, and the clouds were the most dense on the top of the Laolong mountain. Li Wei immediately realized that this might not be a simple weather problem, so he sent someone to find a folk expert. After this expert arrived, he only took a glance and discovered the problem. He said that all of this was due to a change in the Earth's atmosphere at the foot of Laolong mountain, which caused the imbalance of yin and yang. The heavy rain continued, and in order to completely control floods, something must be done to suppress this Earth's atmosphere. Li Wei asked what he needed, but the expert didn't dare to say at first. Finally, with Li Wei's repeated pleadings and guarantees, he boldly spoke up. Originally, the reason why the expert dared not speak up was because in order to suppress the local atmosphere, a stone tablet from the emperor was needed. Only the qi of the emperor could control a local area. However, once such a thing was said, it could be fatal. Therefore, after saying these words, the expert hurriedly left without any news. And Yongzheng was precisely an emperor who did not believe in ghosts and gods. After careful consideration, Li Wei still couldn't let go of the people of the area, so he risked his life to report against the risk of dereliction of duty. Fortunately, Li Wei was one of Yongzheng's few loyal ministers. Although Yongzheng was unhappy, he still ordered someone to transport a strange stone from the backyard, 9 orifices Linglong, to Longgang County. Li Wei followed the advice of the expert and placed this 9 orifices and exquisite stone at the location where the Earth's atmosphere converged. As soon as the stone tablet fell, there were 9 muffled sounds in the mountains. Then the clouds dispersed and the sky opened up. Within a few days, the flood receded on its own. And this 9 orifices Linglong stele is the one in front of me. It is said that this story is a true story, which was widely circulated in our local area in earlier years and is generally known to everyone. However, as time passed, this stone tablet gradually became forgotten. But about all of this, there is another secret, one that concerns the expert from the beginning. This person is none other than my grandfather, the 4th-generation coffin bearer of the Zhang family. And my grandfather, in the beginning, did not tell the truth about this matter, but told a huge lie. The flood here was not as simple as a chaotic atmosphere. Now, suddenly seeing this woman in white, I feel even more eerie and unpredictable in my heart. But my grandfather instructed me not to meddle in anything I see. I gritted my teeth and pretended not to see it. I swung a shovel and began to dig the monument. About half an hour later, I was panting heavily, but I was about to dig out the stone tablet and gently shook it with a push of my hand. At this moment, a car swayed in front of me, with bright headlights piercing my eyes. Little soybean milk, I'm here. Do you miss me? Lin Wan's voice came from the car window, and I couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief. I quickly patted the soil and stood up. You're here, I said with a smile. You flipped through my brand, dare I not come? I couldn't help but laugh and cry, but Lin Wan got off the car with a smile on her face. She was wearing a white cashmere windbreaker, standing tall yet curvaceous. The red knitted scarf was like a delicate rose, accentuating her delicate cheeks and making her look quite beautiful. I really didn't expect you to become so beautiful now. I said sincerely. There's still time to regret now, I've been alone all along, Lin Wan snapped at me. We haven't seen each other for a few years, and we have all undergone changes, but the feelings of our classmates remain the same as before. Thank you for coming, I said sincerely. Sadness and obedience. Just as Lin Wan finished speaking, she suddenly stared at my back tightly, her eyes widened in fear. There's someone behind you. Chapter 4. Something comes in. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. I was startled and quickly turned around, but there was nothing. Lin Wan laughed heartily. You're so cowardly, I'm teasing you. I wiped away my sweat, shook my head helplessly, and my heart was almost scared by her. Next, while working and chatting with Lin Wan, it's basically about the years after graduating from high school. Actually, there wasn't much substance involved. College life was dull and boring, so Lin Wan asked me if I had ever had a girlfriend in college. I smiled bitterly and shook my head, then talked about my current situation. My family has been carrying coffins for generations, and I am already the 9th generation in my generation, I said. Will you do this again in the future? Lin Wan asked. I don't know, I think I will. I feel a bit melancholy, after all, I am still a college student and have my own dreams. By the way, what about you? What are you doing now? I changed the topic. I'm selling houses in Kowloon City, sales manager, okay. Lin Wan felt a little proud. TSK tisk, it's not bad. How is the house selling? I asked. It used to be good, but it's not selling well lately. Lin Wan's face suddenly turned sad. Why? I'm curious. Hey, there have been several accidents on the construction site, 1 dead and 6 injured. The news has spread, and I don't know who spread rumors that Kowloon City is not clean, causing many people to dare not buy. Lin Wan looked helpless. I was a bit curious. Just as I was about to ask what was going on, the tombstone suddenly collapsed with a loud cry. Finally dug it up, I was overjoyed. Then I quickly tied the stone tablet with a rope. The stone tablet was not as heavy as I had imagined, because it was quite special. It was not a square entity, but a hollow one with several holes of different sizes on it. I counted exactly 9, which were scattered throughout the stone tablet. This stone tablet is so strange, you see these holes are actually interconnected. Lin Wan walked up and said curiously with a flashlight. My heart says, isn't it? If there is no uniqueness, how can it be called the 9 orifices Linglong steel? How can you enter the imperial garden in the palace? While talking, I tied a knot, and then used a shovel to put it through. Lin Wan hurriedly came to help, and we both tried hard to lift the stone tablet. Oh! There seems to be a hole, Lin Wan said. I also saw that there is not solid soil under the stone tablet, and there is indeed a hole under a few tree roots. I guess it's some kind of animal nest, don't worry about it and leave quickly. I remembered my grandfather's instructions and didn't take a closer look. Lin Wan let out a sigh, and we turned around and lowered the stone tablet, then placed it on the tricycle. But just as everything was ready to ride away, a woman's voice suddenly sounded in my ear. Help me, I was suddenly startled and turned my head to look at the place where the monument was erected. The sound came from there. What's wrong? Lin Wan turned around and looked at me puzzled. Did you hear a woman talking? I asked nervously. Lin Wan's face changed as she hugged my arm and said, Zhang Jiuyang. Don't scare me. Seeing me not speaking, Lin Wan gritted her teeth and boldly walked back, shining a flashlight down and then exclaiming in surprise. Zhang Jiuyang, come here quickly, there's something. I hesitated for a moment before walking over. Under the illumination of the flashlight, there was actually a skeleton lying inside the black hole. This skeleton is over a meter long and looks like a python. It is as thick and thin as a human thigh, with a brass nail inserted into its head, firmly fixed on the ground. Lin Wan and I exchanged a glance, both seeing the surprise in each other's eyes. It was obvious that the snake had been nailed to death with a brass nail. Lin Wan reached out and was about to pull out the brass nail. I quickly reached out and stopped her. My grandfather warned me not to meddle, especially since this stone tablet was already full of evil intent. Let's go, this thing can't be touched. As I spoke, I turned around and descended the earthen slope. After fixing the stone tablet, Lin Wan followed me with her hands behind her back, and then saw her waving her hand at me. My face suddenly changed. Lin Wan surprisingly pulled out the copper nail. Lin Wan, you. What are you afraid of? It's just a copper nail, isn't it? Lin Wan turned around nonchalantly and walked to the side of the car. Nonsense. I snatched the copper nail away and prepared to reinsert it, but at that moment, a gust of wind blew by and with a crisp bang, the snake bones shattered and fell as if weathered. The strange wind brought an indescribable chill, and I didn't dare to delay. I quickly filled the hole and urged Lin Wan to leave quickly. When I left the village entrance, the feeling of being stared at reappeared. I turned around and looked back, but there was nothing. But I just feel like there's a pair of eyes staring at me in the dark. The process of engraving the monument went smoothly. At 3:30 a.m., we returned home, but just as we entered the door, something strange happened. The stone tablet, which was originally lying on the tricycle, suddenly stood up with a loud bang. Following closely, the entire tricycle suddenly sank, as if something heavy had suddenly pressed against it. Then, with a loud bang, the tricycle exploded. This eerie scene scared Lin Wan to the point where her face turned pale. She screamed and jumped off the tricycle, then pulled her over and hid behind me. Huzi heard the sound and rushed out, asking me what was wrong. I didn't say a word and stared at the tombstone tightly. At this moment, the tombstone suddenly shook violently, as if someone was fighting for it. The tricycle also shook violently, and in a few moments, the other tire burst under the weight. Lin Wan screamed in fear, and I quickly protected her. "Young master, be careful, there's something dirty at home." Huzi exclaimed and protected us behind him. Before the words could be finished, the New Year's door painting pasted on the door suddenly burst into flames with a shout, and two of them burned simultaneously. I was shocked to find that this thing was so ferocious that I couldn't even control the door paintings. It was simply shocking. At this moment, the door painting of the main room also burst into flames with a loud bang, and the flames instantly rose 2 feet high. "Young master, what have you done to provoke such a fierce thing?" Huzi's face turned pale. "I didn't know, I didn't do anything." Halfway through my words, I suddenly turned my head to look at Lin Wan. Lin Wan was also stunned, and then spoke in unison, "It's that copper nail. Zhang Jiuyang, did I cause trouble?" Lin Wan looked panicked. "It's okay, I have a solution." As I spoke, I turned my head and rushed into the room, taking out the dragon rope, the rope used for carrying coffins, that my grandfather had been using for many years. I pounced on it and started tying the stone tablet. "Huzi, Longgang, hurry." The stone tablet shook even more violently, and I finally tied it up. At this moment, Huzi also brought the dragon pole over. "Lin Wan, come and help, let's lift the stone tablet in," I shouted to Lin Wan, who was at a loss. Although Lin Wan was scared a lot, she quickly ran over. Huzi wanted to come up and help, so I quickly drank him back. "He must not touch this thing." The dragon pole passed through the rope, and Lin Wan and I placed our heads on our shoulders. I shouted 1, 2, 3, and Lin Wan and I both exerted force, lifting the stone tablet in one go. The stone tablet shook violently, and the force fought desperately to obstruct us. Lin Wan couldn't bear it anymore, and a painful expression appeared on her face. Her body was shaking and she was about to fall down. I became anxious and shouted, "Lin Wan, hold on, carry it inside, I can be your boyfriend." When Lin Wan heard this, her body stabilized. "Little soybean milk, that's what you said, ah." With a coquettish moan, Lin Wan didn't know where the strength came from. Xiao Man straightened his waist and tightly grasped the dragon bars with both hands as he walked into the yard. It was precisely because of this momentary outburst that Lin Wan and I immediately lifted the stone tablet into the courtyard, while I quickly recited the Anwu mantra. The stone tablet is famous, and it has a surname. When you enter my Zhang family, heaven and earth serve as evidence, earth hides laws and regulations, and evil forces quickly clear, settle, settle, settle. As soon as the words fell, a woman's roar suddenly echoed in the sky. "Don't! Then, I felt the stone tablet suddenly light up. I know that the dirty things were forced to leave from the stone tablet. The stone tablet entered my house and recited the Anwu mantra, which belonged to my Zhang family. With a name and protection from heaven and earth, things outside of the Zhang family could no longer inhabit. A gust of wind suddenly blew outside, accompanied by a gloomy laughter from a woman. The laughter was filled with resentment and echoed on the roof of my house. It took a long time for it to dissipate. I breathed a sigh of relief and sat down on the manhole cover, my back wet with cold sweat. Lin Wan, like me, had a pale face and was greatly frightened. "Little soybean milk, you killed me." Lin Wan pouted and looked at me angrily. "It's not because you're quick," I said helplessly. "I don't care, you promised to be my boyfriend anyway," Lin Wan said proudly. "You don't even care about the main point of the problem." I stared at her in amazement, and most people would be scared to death if such a thing happened. She actually put her mind on this. "What's the point?" "That's the point. Don't try to be deceitful," Lin Wan pouted. "Don't you even know you're afraid? What's scary about it?" "I have a lot of courage," Lin Wan didn't take it seriously. I am speechless. Later on, I felt relieved. I have to say that Lin Wan's adaptability is really strong, but even I don't know what will happen tomorrow night. Hope everything goes smoothly then. Soon, the next day arrived. On this day, I realized how glorious my grandfather's life was. Since a few rural relatives arrived early in the morning, cars have been constantly driving to my front door. Although I hardly know these people, besides some influential figures, there seem to be some quite mysterious people. By October 30th, noon, the convoy had already lined up on the road at the village entrance. At least there are dozens or even hundreds of vehicles. I didn't expect my grandfather, a coffin bearer who deals with dead people, to have so many people come to see him off. Suddenly, my view on this industry changed a bit. As instructed by my grandfather, guests are required to register their names and receive no gift money. However, looking at the gift money that can easily amount to tens of thousands or even tens of thousands, my heart is dripping with blood. I roughly calculated that in just this short amount of time, there will be at least 1 million yuan. This money is enough to buy a house in 4th and 5th tier cities. Little soybean milk, isn't your grandpa a big man who retired from the city? There are so many gift givers. Lin Wan whispered. Before she could finish speaking, Lin Wan suddenly let out a sigh. I followed her gaze and saw a graceful figure slowly walking in outside the door. She was a beautiful woman of 20.6 or 7 years old, with light makeup and no makeup but an unparalleled charm. As she walked slowly, there was a moment of silence inside and outside the yard, and then someone began to greet her with a smile, calling her Mr. Yi. The beautiful woman responded and walked towards me, standing in front of me. "Are you the 9th young master?" Chapter 5. Feng Shui Treasure Cave. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I nodded with a smile, and the beautiful woman said her condolences before entering the funeral hall to offer incense to my grandfather. When she came out, she was holding a bank card in her hand. 4th Master Zhang was very kind to my family when he was alive. There are 500,000 yuan in it, and the money is not much. Please don't dislike me for a little kindness. 500000, my little heart pounded fiercely, but still pushed it out. At this moment, my heart was really dripping blood. Sorry, I can't accept it. Grandpa had an explanation before he passed away that he only served wine and didn't accept gifts. So it's like this, it's really the style of the 4th master. The beautiful woman didn't refuse to act coquettishly, smiled slightly, and naturally put away her bank card. After nodding to me again, she casually found a table and sat down. Young master, that person is a bit strange. Huzi suddenly walked up and pointed to a young man wearing linen clothes next to the main table. This person is in his early 20s, with a thin face and slightly high cheekbones, but his eyes are very clear. The most prominent feature is a red spot the size of a fingernail on the corner of his eyebrows. When I looked at this young man, he was frowning and looking at the table, feeling my gaze. He lifted his head and looked at me, wondering if the visitor was a guest. I still nodded and saluted. He glanced at the table again, but suddenly stood up, pressed his right hand on the table, smiled slightly at me, and then turned around and walked towards the outside. This smile is very strange and makes me feel very uncomfortable. As he left, the people sitting next to him also stood up, no more, no less, exactly 8, all respectfully following behind and getting into 2 cars. Huzi was about to rush over and stop him, but I stopped him. As I watched the young man leave, I remained silent. Young master, they are also coffin bearers. I know. I just can't figure out why they suddenly left again since they came and didn't eat or stay. I couldn't help but walk up to the table where he was sitting and look down. There was a copper coin placed on the table, which was a Guangxu Tongbao from the Qin dynasty. Just this copper coin has a slight deformation. I picked it up. I pinched it with my hands. This person is a master. Huzi's face was solemn. I nodded, but did not focus on the copper coin. Instead, I looked at the table, where there were marks of copper coins passing by, 2 long and 2 short markers, with the top and bottom being long and the 2 short in the middle. This is the 8 trigrams of the day after tomorrow, but it is one of them. To the south is Li, which belongs to fire. The key is copper coins, which belong to gold. All of this seems to match what happened last night. I couldn't help but furrow my brows slightly. I don't know what this hexagram represents, but I know this person is not simple. Being able to make such a hexagram is definitely not a coincidence. It seems that he has figured something out and quickly left. I couldn't help but think of the phone call from the left cripple yesterday. I don't know if it's related, and there was no trace of the cripple in the crowd. Everything went smoothly. After lunch, under the arrangement of Huzi, guests left one after another, except for Mr. Yi who stayed. It turned out that she had something to ask me for, and after expressing her intention, she wanted me to help her grandfather move the grave. Upon learning that her surname was Yi, I politely declined her request because my grandfather had instructed me that the first time I worked for someone, I had to be surnamed Long. Mr. Yi couldn't help but sigh when he saw me refuse, and then looked at Lin Wan next to him. Lin Wan then stuck out her tongue, indicating that they knew each other. After President Yi left, Lin Wan suddenly looked at me. "Little soybean milk, why don't you help President Yi? She is very kind." "Grandpa has instructed not to help casually," I said. Lin Wan exclaimed and stopped asking further questions. Time quickly arrived at night, and after dinner, the sky turned dark. I asked Huzi to go to the street to rest, leaving only me and Lin Wan in the room. The atmosphere suddenly became somewhat oppressive. Amidst the painful waiting, I finally arrived at the prime time, and my spirit suddenly shook. "Are you ready?" I stared at Lin Wan and asked. She quickly nodded, but I could tell she was very nervous, and in fact, I was the same. I wasn't mentally prepared for the idea of my grandfather carrying his coffin when he was still haunted, and now there are more variables. Thinking of that terrifying filth from last night, I really don't know what will happen soon. I took a deep breath and stood up, picked up the dragon pole and passed it through the dragon rope, and Lin Wan also stood up. Due to the special circumstances, the funeral process was completely omitted. I only needed to follow my grandfather's instructions and carry the stone tablet all the way west. Dang! Dang! The ancient clock rang, striking exactly 12 times, appearing inexplicably heavy in the quiet night. "Get up!" I let out a low moan and worked hard with Lin Wan to lift the stone tablet. Just as the stone tablet was leaving the ground, a strong gust of wind blew in from outside the courtyard. This wind is different from the cold of winter. The cold is on the surface of the body, but this yin wind only penetrates into the bones. Lin Wan and I both shivered at the same time. Zhang Jiuyang, I'm a bit scared, Lin Wan suddenly said with a trembling voice. This girl finally can't stand it anymore. I was actually very nervous, gritted my teeth and said, don't be afraid, just pretend you haven't seen anything. As soon as the words fell, all the candles in the room went out with a loud bang. At the same time, the gate of the yard creaked and inexplicably opened. I quickly looked out, but there was nothing. But I'm sure something has entered my yard. I quickly said, go, and then took a step outside. Lin Wan hurriedly got up and followed, almost tripping over the threshold due to nervousness. As I turned the corner, I couldn't help but glance at the spiritual hall. In the darkness, there were 8 more figures hidden in the hall, faintly visible. At this moment, one of the 8 people seemed to have noticed me peeping and looked up at me. I quickly withdrew my gaze, but still felt a huge panic. Lin Wan wanted to turn back, but I quickly stopped her and said, don't look, don't turn back either. Lin Wan exclaimed in a panic, then we turned around and headed west. The stone tablet was not too heavy, about 100 pounds, and the 2 of them were relatively relaxed. After walking for about 100 meters, a lightning bolt suddenly flashed through the pitch-black night sky, followed by heavy rain. The rain was heavy and urgent, which was abnormal. It immediately soaked me and Lin Wan, and we both shivered. We gritted our teeth and kept walking west. It wasn't long before we crossed the road outside the village. At this point, I probably had to walk 2 miles. My stamina was okay, but Lin Wan felt a bit tired. Zhang Jiuyang, where exactly is your grandfather buried? It's already out of the village. Lin Wan's voice trembled slightly. I also muttered in my heart that if we continue with this situation, we may soon arrive at Laolong Mountain. Grandpa said it would be a tomb on the ground, but this stone tablet has not moved at all. Is it okay, can you still persist? I asked with concern. Who do you look down on? Lin Wan snorted and gritted her teeth, insisting. 2 minutes later, the rain grew heavier and the ground began to slip and muddy, and we finally arrived at the foot of Laolong Mountain. Lin Wan seems to be struggling, and I can feel the dragon bar on my shoulder swaying slightly. I can't help but feel a wave of guilt in my heart. Just as I was hesitating what to do next, there was a loud roar in front of me. Looking up, I was immediately startled. The reservoir burst at this moment, the surging water rushed towards us, half a person high, and in the blink of an eye, it was right in front of us. Lin Wan screamed in fear and asked me what to do. I looked around and ran with her towards the nearby small pine forest, which was the only highland. We had just climbed into the pine forest and the big water roared through from below. It was at this moment that I suddenly felt the dragon rope on my shoulder become heavier, and then I heard a loud bang. The dragon rope suddenly broke, and the 9 orifices Linglong steel fell to the ground. I was momentarily taken aback, then my heart was filled with great joy. The ground fell into a tomb, and it turned out that my grandfather was going to be buried here. Lin Wan also breathed a sigh of relief, and then leaned against a pine tree to catch her breath regardless of her appearance. I was not idle. I swung a shovel and began to dig the burial pit. I thought it was a big project and it would take a few hours, but what I didn't expect was that when the burial pit was dug to a thickness of 3 feet, it suddenly collapsed with a loud bang, and I almost fell along. Then I heard the sound of splashing water as the flashlight shone down. Lin Wan and I were both stunned. Below was a natural pit that had been sinking about 7 feet. In the middle of the pit, there was a puddle with 2 small fish swimming continuously. I only took a glance and was shocked beyond measure. I didn't expect this natural Feng Shui treasure cave to be hidden here. The Yin-Yang 2 Qi acupoints, the 3rd Feng Shui treasure acupoint in the tomb, unexpectedly appeared here. This type of acupoint generates its own yin and yang, and the circulation of yin and yang is endless. This acupoint is constantly full of vitality, and the 2 fish in the water pool are nurtured by this vitality. It has a prosperous population, high sovereignty, and water is wealth, making the master's family prosperous. It is not an exaggeration to say that such a feng shui treasure cave was only possessed by ancient emperors and generals. It turned out that Grandpa had found such a good place for himself. No wonder he wanted to hide everything. If outsiders found out about it, it would have been shocking. Lin Wan was also very curious and asked me what it was. I took a deep breath and told her that this matter must not be leaked. Lin Wan also felt that the situation was extraordinary and quickly promised me that she would never tell anyone else. I suppressed the excitement in my heart and began to widen the burial pit and clean up the fallen soil. After about half an hour, everything was ready. However, my grandfather's coffin has not yet appeared, and I can't help but feel anxious, but I can only patiently wait. What surprised me was that, instead of waiting for Grandpa's coffin, a few unexpected guests arrived. With a fierce smile, Li Sigu appeared out of nowhere, followed by 2 big men behind me. I suddenly let out a bad cry, knowing that something bad was happening. Chapter 6. 8 Ghosts Carrying Coffins, Mountains Singing and Monuments Cracking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Forcing you, I've finally caught you. Li Sigu walked over cursing and stood in front of me, with a cast on his neck. So the old thing is buried here. As he spoke, Li Sigu walked over to the burial pit and looked down, then he also froze. Damn it, why are there 2 fish here? I remained silent. Li Sigu looked at the yin-yang fish and suddenly gave a fierce smile. Don't think I don't know if you don't say it. Your grandfather has carried the coffin for a lifetime, and he will definitely find a good place for himself. It seems that this is likely a feng shui treasure land. As he spoke, he gave a gloomy smile and said, this is such a good place, can't it be cheaper for your Zhang family? What do you mean? I exclaimed inwardly. What do you mean? Damn it, such a good place would definitely bury us Li family. As he spoke, he waved at the person next to him and said, smash the stone tablet for me. How dare you, you're not afraid of being struck by lightning when you do such a thing. My eyes suddenly turned red. The people beside me didn't care about this. They came over with a smile, grabbed the shovel in my hand, and smashed it into the stone tablet. But at that moment, a lightning bolt suddenly fell from the sky, landing on this person with a loud click. The person didn't even have time to make a sound and fell to the ground without moving. We were all frightened by the thunder and hurriedly retreated, then turned our heads to look at the body emitting white smoke, without any reaction for a long time. Evil, too evil. The other person was obviously frightened and said he had seen a ghost before running away. Li Sigu finally reacted and didn't listen when he shouted. He didn't know where to get a hunting gun, gritted his teeth and shot this person, causing his body to stumble and continue running forward. Li Sigu cursed at me and suddenly turned the gun towards me. His mother, you come. I snorted coldly and stared at him intently. You've done so many bad things, and God won't let you go. Li Sigu slammed his gun into my face, causing me to stumble. Subsequently, he aimed his gun at Lin Wan. Do you believe that I will kill your girlfriend now if you talk nonsense again? Don't give me a hand yet. Li Sigu let out a loud roar, tore open Lin Wan's collar, and used his hand to forcefully pinch Lin Wan's chest, causing her to scream in shock. You let go of her, I'll smash it. My eyes turned red, but I could only obediently submit. I couldn't ignore Lin Wan. Bending down, I picked up the shovel from the corpse. When I got up, I was stunned, staring at Li Sigu's back with my mouth wide open. Behind Li Sigu, a square coffin was slowly drifting over, to be precise, carried by 8 faintly visible black shadows. Seeing my grandfather's coffin, not only did I not feel nervous, but I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Because I know Li Sigu is going to be finished. Li Sigu saw me bending down and not moving, and immediately cursed, "Why is your special mother not moving? What the hell? Speaking, Li Sigu instinctively turned around to look. At this moment, the coffin stopped 2 meters away from him, and Li Sigu trembled all over, then froze in place. This dog day was obviously scared silly. Taking advantage of this moment, I pulled Lin Wan into my arms. Her body trembled with fear, and I quickly hugged her. The 8 figures are very blurry, and I cannot see their appearance. Ha! Grandpa's coffin did not stop, but floated over Li Sigu's head, and the cold wind blew fiercely on his face. Li Sigu remained motionless as if he had been hit by an immobilization technique. After a few seconds, he let out a strange giggle and slowly twisted his head like a puppet. A lightning bolt flashed past, and I saw Li Sigu's face. He was laughing, with a strange smile, and then he stepped forward, walking towards the burial pit like a puppet. Walking while giggling, the eerie sound made one's body tingle. Damn it, I'm guilty," he said wooden. When he reached the edge of the burial pit, he stopped and suddenly slammed the barrel into his mouth, pulling the trigger without hesitation. Bang! At the moment when the gunshots rang out, Lin Wan and I both trembled, and Lin Wan was so scared that she plunged her head into my arms. Subsequently, Li Sigu's body fell into the burial pit. To be honest, at this moment, I was scared and my breathing became rapid. After a while, Lin Wan slowly turned her head and looked at the body of Li Sigu. She slowly turned around and walked to a big tree, trembling and squatting down. She covered her face with both hands and buried it in her knees. All of this is difficult for her and for me to accept, especially since she is a girl who has not witnessed the scene of a living person dying. She would not understand our feelings at that time. I looked at the body in the burial pit and took a deep breath. Just as I was about to retrieve the body, my grandfather's coffin suddenly floated directly above and fell with a loud bang. I was dumbfounded, and Lin Wan couldn't help but lift her head. What should I do? Although her voice was trembling, it was stronger than I had imagined. What should I do next? I don't know either. The coffin is so heavy that I can't lift it. At this moment, a slight tapping sound suddenly came from inside the coffin. Dong! Dong! No more, no less, just 7 times. A person lives for a lifetime, born to the extreme, died to the dough, and the northern dough is the 7th. Grandpa is telling me that the 7 stars return to their positions and entering the earth is safe. Sure enough, after 7 sounds, a gust of wind blew in place, and the blurry figure disappeared with the wind, as if it had never appeared before. The wind stops, the clouds stop, the rain stops. All dust settles. The body of Li Sigu can only be like this. It's okay, the wicked will eventually have their retribution, and the retribution of the Li family is about to begin. The coffin can crush people and never turn them over. If Li Sigu dies, his Li family's luck will also be affected. Besides, at least he will be crushed to death by my Zhang family. Since this is Grandpa's intention, I choose to believe in Grandpa. Taking a deep breath, I began to fill the soil and seal the monument. When I finish everything, it just happens to be daylight. I looked at the Longshan Reservoir and it wasn't really a breach, it was just a gap in the outer opening of the dam that collapsed, and there wasn't much of a problem. Lin Wan and I rested for a moment, and a morning sun shone down on the cemetery. I stood up and moved my muscles and bones, and my gaze suddenly froze as we looked around. At this moment, the tombstone stands facing southeast and facing the sun, with its back against Erlong Mountain. To the left is a reservoir, while the pine forest under my feet happens to be above the lonko of Erlong Mountain. I understand now, here, it's actually 2 dragons playing with pearls. No wonder the terrain here has collapsed, but this pine forest stands firm and it turns out to be a piece of Dragon Ball land. It's just that the Dragon Ball is too close to the village road, with ravines and weeds nearby, and the terrain is extremely low. Usually, no one pays attention, but instead it becomes the best disguise. If you don't look closely, this is just a piece of wilderness. The only downside is that the wooden atmosphere here is too strong, and the body will not rot for a long time. Is it really good for Li Sigu to be trapped here? I asked Lin Wan to go back and drive first, and we will go directly to the city later. Then I opened my backpack, took out candles to light for my grandfather, and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Just as I was getting ready to stand up, the nearby Erlong mountain suddenly shook with 2 muffled growls. I seemed to hear an unwilling roar, and the stone tablet in front of me suddenly cracked open with a crack. I was anxious in my heart and quickly reached for the stone tablet with my hand. Just as I touched it, a warm stream of air suddenly entered my body through the palm of my hand. I suddenly felt a mental shock, and then the airflow disappeared, as if it were an illusion. And the vibration of Lialongshan also stopped, but there was a thumb-sized crack on the tombstone, and the stone chips peeled off. The inscription on the tombstone also became blurry. I looked at the direction of Erlong Mountain without saying a word for a long time, and my mind recalled the conversation with my grandfather the day before yesterday. Gradually, I felt a bit clear in my heart. On February 2nd, the dragon looks up. And those 2 fish. I took a deep breath and looked at my grandfather's tombstone, my eyes slightly turning red. Finally, I knew what my grandfather had done. A few minutes later, Lin Wan's car drove over, and I kowtowed 3 times to my grandfather. Then, I bowed all the way to the direction of Erlong Mountain. After all, I stole its luck. Then, I resolutely got into Lin Wan's car and drove straight towards the city. But I know this matter is just the beginning. I made taboos on 2 of the 3 things my grandfather told me before he passed away. Lin Wan pulled out the copper nail from the python's head under the stone tablet, as if releasing an extremely dirty thing. And during the burial, Li Sigu ran out again, 2 died and 1 ran away, and everything had more variables. As for the body that was struck by lightning, it has already been dealt with by Huzi, who came overnight. I asked him to pull it to a farther place and casually abandon it. Anyway, he was killed by lightning and has nothing to do with murder. Only the one who escaped is the biggest hidden danger. The Li brothers will soon discover the disappearance of Li Sigu, and it is estimated that they will soon find me. I must be well prepared before that. After entering the city, I got into Huzi's car, and Lin Wan went home alone. Looking at her haggard face, my heart was filled with guilt. My family has a 2-story funeral home in Jiangcheng. I lived here in high school for a few years, and after opening the door, I fell into bed and fell asleep, burying my head in a deep sleep. I didn't sleep very well this night, feeling exhausted and without any strength. I always felt a hazy white air pressure pressing against me. This white air seemed to want to burrow into my body, but it couldn't get in no matter what. In the end, it turned into a white snake and looked at me fiercely. A moment later, he turned into a woman in white, just like the woman he saw at the entrance of the village. His eyes were full of malice, and then he opened his arms and rushed towards me. I was startled and a convulsion occurred as I sat up from the bed. "Young master, have you had a nightmare?" "I can't wake up no matter how I call," Huzi sat on the side and asked with concern. I covered my head and breathed a long sigh of relief. After a while, I finally regained consciousness. It was already past 9 o'clock at night, and I slept soundly all day. Seeing that I was not in good condition, Huzi went out without saying a word to buy food. I took a shower and changed into clean clothes. At this moment, Huzi came back with a big bag of takeout. I was really hungry and wolfed down most of the food, which made me feel much more comfortable. Looking at the familiar store, I am ready to personally carve a plaque for my grandfather. But at this moment, I received a video call from Lin Wan, and I quickly answered it. Then I saw Lin Wan curled up in the corner, looking panicked and speaking with a crying tone. "Zhang Jiuyang, help me quickly, I'm entangled in that thing." Chapter 7. White Snake Entangled, Red Qipao Girl. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. My heart sank with a thud. "Don't worry, speak slowly. What exactly happened?" I forced myself to remain calm and asked. Lin Wan's tears welled up, then she pulled open her collar and exposed her collarbone, leaving me completely stunned. At the chest, there appeared a small snake pattern, which was exactly the same as what I dreamed. Where did this pattern come from? My throat was a bit dry. Wouldn't things be so coincidental? I don't know either. I had a nightmare just now and saw a big white snake wrapping around me. I was scared and woke up, and then I saw it appear on me. Zhang Jiuyang, did I cause trouble? Is it that thing? Lin Wan clearly guessed. Where are you? I'll go over now, I said. Don't come over, my brother is at home. He's been crazy lately. I'll go to your place, Lin Wan suddenly said, and then hung up the phone. Huzi saw that my face was heavy, so he asked me what was wrong. I didn't hide anything and told the general story. Huzi's face also became ugly. It's all this girl's fault. If she hadn't pulled out that copper nail, she wouldn't have provoked that dirty thing, Huzi said with a calm face. Huzi, don't say that. If it weren't for me, Lin Wan wouldn't have been involved in this matter. I owe her, I sighed. Huzi stopped speaking, but it was evident that he had resentment towards Lin Wan. I'm not sure what's underneath this stone tablet. About 10 minutes later, Lin Wan arrived. She didn't look very well, her eyes were red, and obviously didn't sleep well either. How do you feel? Are you feeling unwell? I quickly asked. Lin Wan felt it for a moment and shook her head gently. There's nothing uncomfortable with my body, it's just a bit scared, she said. I nodded and let her in to speak, but to my surprise, as soon as Lin Wan walked in, she suddenly covered her chest and let out a painful moan. What's wrong? I asked nervously. Lin Wan expressed pain with a painful expression, holding on to the position of her collarbone. I asked her to open her collar and take a look, and Lin Wan's face immediately turned red. She didn't even feel that she would unbutton her face through her phone just now, and she was clearly embarrassed. Huzi hummed and turned his head. Lin Wan blushed and opened her collar. Suddenly, a snow-white scene appeared in front of me, and I could vaguely see the infinite spring inside. Light, I have to say, Lin Wan's figure is really amazing. Lin Wan noticed my abnormality, glanced at me with her eyes, and whispered, "What are you looking at?" "There's an outsider." Blush and I quickly withdrew my eyes, because there was nothing here for Lin Wan's collarbone. How could this be? I was a bit surprised. I saw it very clearly in the video just now, how could it disappear in the blink of an eye? Little soybean milk, can I still be saved? I don't want to die so early. I have to give birth to you. Lin Wan said sadly. I was immediately amused by her and couldn't help but cry and laugh. You still have a poor mind, I said. You said you were my boyfriend, Lin Wan said. I shook my head and said, this thing seems to have left. Don't be afraid, she shouldn't dare to come in. But as soon as I finished speaking, Lin Wan suddenly pointed behind me in terror, her mouth slightly open and unable to speak. Cluck! A gloomy laughter suddenly rang out from behind, and the temperature in the room suddenly became cold. I just felt my whole body tighten and my hair stand up. When I turned around, a white figure was standing on a coffin, looking at me with a gloomy expression. It's obvious that she's coming for me. Young master! Huzi exclaimed in surprise and jumped over, blocking me behind. No matter what you are, hurry up and leave me, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite, Huzi shouted loudly, suddenly having a fruit knife in his hand. Lin Wan suddenly exclaimed and hid behind me. It's not because of you. If it weren't for you pulling out the copper nail, such a thing wouldn't have happened, said Huzi. Huzi, stop talking. I frowned. Sure enough, Lin Wan immediately lowered her head, like a child making mistakes, and then whispered to me. Soybean milk, can you deal with her? I shook my head helplessly. My Zhang family has been carrying coffins for 9 generations, talking about settling in the earth for safety, doing good deeds, borrowing the energy of heaven and earth, seeking peace of mind, but rarely doing anything to eliminate them. Ancestors have been like this for generations, and my grandfather has made a special statement before his death that it is not a matter of life or death, and that I should not easily kill someone. Lin Wan misunderstood my meaning and thought I had no choice. She gritted her teeth and lifted her head, took a step forward, pointed at the woman, and said, "Why do you want to come at me? It's nothing to do with him." I looked at Lin Wan in surprise, feeling a bit moved in my heart. Even Huzi turned his head unexpectedly. The woman in white glanced at Lin Wan and suddenly slowly made a fortune note, which stunned us all. Then, she looked at me again, her eyes suddenly turning red, and a strong resentment suddenly emanated. A gust of strong wind blew up in the room, and a crackling sound fell from the shop. "Dare, who are you and why are you bothering me?" My face looked a bit ugly. The woman in white remained silent, gave a gloomy smile, then turned into a white smoke and disappeared into one of the coffins. After a while, the three of us finally came to our senses. When we opened the coffin, we saw a small white snake lying inside, with its thumbs coiled in a lump, constantly spitting messages at me. Without saying a word, Huzi stabbed the snake to death with his knife, and I didn't even have time to stop it. Fresh blood immediately spread out, emitting a faint smell of blood. I looked at the snake corpse that had been nailed to death with a knife and couldn't help but frown. Finally, I sighed and could only give up. I know this matter is definitely not over, we can only take one step at a time. That night, I didn't sleep much and kept thinking about this dirty thing. Based on what I dreamt of today, this dirty thing should have come to me first, and then to Lin Wan. However, from the current situation, it seems that she has no intention of persecuting Lin Wan. One night passed quickly, and after breakfast, Huzi went to the rental company to return the car, while I found a piece of wood to make a plaque for my grandfather. According to my grandfather's request, I used my birth date and 8 characters to establish the position, and quickly obtained a congenital 8-character position, which is in the southwest position. To the south is Qian, Qian corresponds to Tian, to the west is Can, Can corresponds to Shui, and to the southwest is the center, accompanied by Tian Shui. With my 8-character system, it is truly the rare celestial feng shui. After the plaque was erected, I opened all the doors and windows in the room, intending to absorb the energy of all directions, and then offered incense. After the incense candle burned for a moment, a gust of wind blew and the white smoke turned into blue. Everything is an auspicious sign. And Lin Wan's body seems to have returned to normal. I feel much better, but on that night, I started dreaming again. However, this time I dreamt of an old man who came to me covered in blood and kept repeating a sentence. "Master Zhang, it's time. I don't have time anymore." I asked him what he meant, and he moved his mouth for a while, but I couldn't hear what he said. It was like this all night. After dawn, I forgot about this dream and stayed in the shop with Huzi, patiently waiting at home for someone surnamed Long to come knocking on my door. In the next few days, there were indeed quite a few people coming, many of whom came to get familiar with each other and asked for help. However, among so many people, there was no one surnamed Long, so I could only politely refuse. After a few days, both Huzi and I had empty wallets. Huzi decided to go out and start doing odd jobs while I waited in the store. At noon, a woman wearing a red Qipao suddenly appeared in the shop. She rushed into the shop with a panic on her face and threw a bag of money on the table as soon as she arrived. "Are you the young master of the Zhang family? Please help me, please help me." I felt sorry for her, so I poured her a cup of tea. She trembled and lit a cigarette, her smoking hands trembling. "Did Li Laosi go to your house the day before yesterday?" she suddenly asked. As soon as I heard these words, there was a thump in my heart. It was time to come. Xie Xiaoman's words made me feel uneasy. "Who are you?" I asked nervously. Could it be that they already knew about Li Sigu's death? The Li brothers are not good people, which one hasn't lived a life of licking blood with a knife. In the beginning, when every village was connected to a highway, the Li brothers secretly manipulated in order to win the project, causing the neighboring village's family surnamed Huang to perish. If it weren't for the fact that my brothers all have lives in their hands, there wouldn't be no one in our area who dares to provoke us. Now that Li Sigu is dead, how could they let me go? After a brief moment of panic, a hint of cruelty flashed in my eyes. Damn it, the Li brothers want to mess with me, it's not that simple. I really want to make things worse. I don't know who killed who. If it were done before, I would definitely have panicked, but since Li Sigu's body was buried under the coffin by my grandfather, I have gained confidence. After all, the fortune of the Li family is now being suppressed under the coffin by my Zhang family. Qi luck is such a mysterious thing. Whoever has strong Qi luck will definitely be better. I must now understand the truth of the matter, and the woman in front of me is a breakthrough point. I looked at her quietly. The woman was dressed in a red qipao, tightly wrapped around her body, with a front convex and back curling that was extremely hot. Regardless of her figure and appearance, she was top-notch, but unfortunately, her whole body was full of rouge. The woman in the qipao trembled as she finished smoking a cigarette, and her emotions gradually calmed down. I watched as she remained silent, waiting for her next message. Can you save me? She picked up the glass on the table. What do you mean? Who wants to kill you? I asked calmly. The woman in the qipao drank the water from the cup in one breath, holding the glass tightly with both hands, as if hesitating. Since you don't want to say it, please go back. I stood up with a cold face and blasted her out. Chapter 8. The Phantom of Qipao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I can't go back, they want to kill me because I know their secret. She nervously shrank into her chair. While shrinking into the chair, he made a strange gesture, with one hand covering his head and the other hand covering his buttocks, looking frightened. What exactly is the secret? I forced myself to calm down, but in fact, my heart was even more nervous than hers. The woman in the qipao suddenly looked at me and gave a stern smile. Has Li Sigu already died? She is quite a beautiful girl, but she smiles very eerily. My heart thumped and I almost blurted out, how do you know? The woman in the qipao stared at me intently when she saw that I was not speaking. Her eyes lit up as she grabbed my arm and said, I knew. She burst out laughing with a fierce and crazy expression. I deserve it, it's good to die. Even those surnamed Li deserve it. Her eyes were red, as if she had gone crazy. But my gaze fell on the button on her chest, and my face changed slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I stood up with a cold face. You don't have to pretend. I don't have any other skills like Xie Xiaoman, I just know how to look at men. You can't deceive me. She said hee, her eyes suddenly shining brightly. Now we're like a rope of grasshoppers. If you don't save me, I'll poke you out. Her face was gloomy and uncertain. This woman looked like a madman, but I knew there was always a reason for anything. But should we help her or not? And in my heart, I couldn't help but weigh whether to continue waiting for the dragon family or to sacrifice myself for my own small life. Quickly, I had an answer in my heart. My grandfather told me 3 things, and the first 2 were flawed, which led to this incident. However, I still decided to listen to my grandfather's words. Before the appearance of my surname Long, I couldn't make any further mistakes. Thinking of this, I took a deep breath and said, someone wants to harm you. You can call the police, please leave. The woman in the qipao was instantly shocked when she heard these words, I'm dead, and you can't live either. This was just heard by the tiger who came back. Dare to threaten the young master, believe it or not, I'll kill you now. Speaking, Huzi walked over and looked coldly at the woman in the qipao. But Xie Xiaoman was not afraid at all, staring at me with open eyes. If you dare to refuse me, I will immediately tell someone surnamed Li that you killed Li Sigu." As soon as she said these words, I knew the bad news. As expected, Huzi's face changed immediately after hearing these words, and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. "I'll kill you first." As he spoke, Huzi pulled up Xia Xiaoman's collar, causing it to burst open and a button to fall off. And the fruit knife hidden somewhere in Huzi's hand reappeared in his hand, firmly pressing against Xia Xiaoman's neck. Xia Xiaoman was finally scared and screamed in fear. I noticed that she started doing the strange action she did just now, covering her head with one hand and her buttocks with the other. "Huzi, don't mess around. I can't help but feel a headache. This tiger is a real tiger." Taking a deep breath, I said calmly, "Miss Xia, I really don't know what you're talking about. On the day of mourning, Li Sigu did come to see me, but I never saw you again." As I spoke, I gave Huzi a glance and then waved my hand, "See off the guests." Huzi snorted coldly and pushed Xia Xiaoman hard towards the outside, causing Xia Xiaoman to struggle. "Master Zhang of the Zhang family, you cannot refuse to save yourself in the face of death. They will really kill me. If I die, being a ghost won't spare you." I just didn't hear what Xia Xiaoman said, but in the end, she was pushed out by Huzi and stuffed into a taxi, and Huzi followed her out. I bent down and picked up the button, my face turning green and white. The reason I was in a hurry to rush Xia Xiaoman away was because this button was a listening device. My roommate in college was a technology enthusiast. He had played with the same model before, so I recognized it at a glance. However, Xia Xiaoman didn't notice at all that the other party had installed a bug on her body. This indicates that there are only two possibilities: either she is really in danger, or the people behind her will have to deal with me. So, when I found this button, I immediately stopped asking and didn't mention anything about the Li family, although I guess her affairs must have something to do with the Li family. I threw the bug into the sewer, and after about 10 minutes, Huzi returned with anger on his face. I poured him a glass of water and asked how he handled the body that was struck by lightning. "Don't worry, young master. I have experience in this kind of thing, and the Li family will definitely not be able to find it." My eyelids twitched for a moment. I was quite scared when I heard this. Could it be that the guy really killed someone? The white tiger's bloodthirsty fate of killing and profiteering fills my heart with worries. Afterwards, I explained everything in detail about what had just happened. As soon as Huzi heard that I was in danger, he immediately decided not to do odd jobs and protected me 24 hours a day. I nodded but did not refuse. After all, one more person and one more strength. There wasn't anything special happening in the next 2 days, it was just that the old man kept appearing in my dreams, and he was becoming increasingly anxious. The people of the Li family did not take action against me, which is somewhat abnormal because it does not fit their personality at all, unless they have other more important things to do. Besides, there is another headache, tiger, and I have reached the point where we have no food to eat. Seeing that dinner was not ready, Lin Wan called specifically and said that she would celebrate her birthday tomorrow and treat us to dinner tomorrow night. Cough, "Lin Wan, can you lend me some money?" "I don't have any money left," I said awkwardly. I couldn't help but express Lin Wan's birthday. "There's no money left, why don't you say it?" "Wait." After hanging up the phone, Lin Wan directly transferred 2,000 yuan to me. Looking at the balance of 2,000 yuan in WeChat, Huzi and I were speechless. Two old men borrowing money from a woman to eat, it goes without saying that they both feel quite embarrassed. Originally, Lin Wan had helped me so much. I should have invited her to dinner long ago, but now that I have limited money, I can only pretend to be my grandson by bowing my head. The next morning, as usual, I offered my grandfather incense. 3 sticks of incense were inserted into the incense burner, and Huzi and I were ready to go out for dinner. But just as I was turning around, there was a soft snap in my ear. I turned around and was immediately stunned. The incense in the incense burner unexpectedly broke 2 pieces, and both Huzi and I changed our faces at the same time. Burning incense has its own rules. People are afraid of 3 long and 2 short things, and incense is afraid of 2 short and 1 long thing. Burning incense like this is a great omen. When Huzi and I saw this situation, both of us stopped walking. "I won't go out today, I'll order takeout," Huzi and I said in unison. So, I spent 2 whole days under the covers, having takeout for breakfast and lunch. On this day, no one from the dragon family came to visit, and I began to doubt whether Grandpa had made a mistake. If this person surnamed Long doesn't come to my door for a lifetime, wouldn't I be trapped for a lifetime? As night approached, I knew it was time to go out. After all, today was Lin Wan's birthday, and at least I had to prepare a gift for her. "Young master, I think it's better not to go out today. It's not a big deal. I feel like there's nothing good about Lin Wan." "Let's be careful," Huzi said anxiously, turning his head to look at the incense burner. Huzi's words were also my concern. After some consideration, I said, "Others can skip it. I can't skip Lin Wan's birthday, otherwise what would I become? But, well, be careful on the way. We both have to take some things with us, so we should be fine." I interrupted Huzi, and Huzi could only nod. I took an axe and pinned it to my waist, feeling uneasy. So I took a wrench and put it into my down jacket. When I went out, I felt it was a bit missing and hid the hammer on my body. I feel much better now, and I feel a sense of security. I didn't dare to leave the door and stopped a taxi to the best shopping mall in Liangcheng, ready to buy a woolen coat for Lin Wan. Her coat was already damaged due to my help, and I have to compensate her for a new one. After getting off the car, Huzi turned his head to look across from the mall. "What are you looking at?" I followed Huzi and saw several tall buildings across the street, which had already been topped out. "This place is worth every inch of land, and this project is indeed impressive." "Young master, this is Jiulong City," said Huzi. "Is this Kowloon City?" I couldn't help but think of Lin Wan. She seemed to be working here, and then she thought of the beautiful Mr. Yi who asked me to help move the grave. It seems that Mr. Yi is indeed quite capable. According to Lin Wan, recent incidents in Kowloon City are likely related to the ancestral tomb surnamed Yi. I shook my head and turned to walk into the mall. No matter how awesome someone is, it has nothing to do with me. Thinking of that 500,000 gift money, my heart is dripping with blood. Huzi and I went straight to the women's clothing store on the 4th floor and soon saw a coat that was exactly the same as Lin Wan's. It seems that she bought it here. When asked about the price, it was 1,999 yuan, and I was immediately confused. The salesperson knew from my appearance that I didn't have any money and smiled, saying that new customers could get a 10% discount of 18%. Although she was laughing, I could still see the faint disdain in her eyes. After all, there was no money in her pocket, and I couldn't pretend to be a tycoon. If I had bought these clothes, I would have eaten dirt again tomorrow. "Forget it, let's talk about it later. Take care of your stomach first." Thinking of this, I turned around and prepared to leave. Just then, a pleasant voice rang out. "Waiter, help this gentleman wrap it up and I'll pay the bill." I turned my head and saw a thin figure standing beside me, smiling and looking at me. "Li Wan!" I exclaimed in surprise. "Zhang Jiuyang, long time no see." I thought I had mistaken someone. Li Wan walked over with a smile. Li Wan is my classmate whom I have been secretly in love with for 3 years in high school. She is beautiful and pure because she has a kind of elegant temperament that I like. "Long time no see, are you okay?" I was a little excited. "Great, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend Lin Tao," she said, pointing to a young man next to her. "Hello, hello." I quickly reached out my hand. Lin Tao smiled indifferently and shook my hand lightly. "Are you buying clothes for your girlfriend?" Li Wan looked at the beautiful woolen coat. "I can't tell, it's quite insightful." No, I don't have a girlfriend yet. My face blushed slightly, and I was particularly shy in front of the girl I liked. Hee, you still love blushing like before. I smiled awkwardly and didn't know how to answer the conversation. Did you forget to bring your money when you went out? I'll cushion it for now, Li Wan said and asked the waiter to pack the clothes. No need, I'll do it myself. I quickly stopped her and gritted my teeth to scan the payment code myself, but I couldn't help but smile bitterly in my heart. Li Wan smiled and asked me, do you have any plans for graduation? Are you working locally or going out for development? I'm not planning to go out for now, help take care of my grandfather's business, I said. I don't know what business my brothers do. Lin Tao suddenly asked when he heard that I do business. I glanced at him and he was clearly a snob. As soon as I heard that I was in business, I started talking to him. I didn't want to talk to him at first, but for the sake of Li Wan's face, I still said, it's a small business, running a funeral home. Lin Tao's face suddenly changed. Doing business with dead people. As he spoke, his face was filled with disgust. What's wrong with doing dead man business? Maybe you'll need it someday, Huzi retorted directly. Hey, how do you talk? Lin Tao's face changed. To be honest, what's wrong? I'm not willing to talk to my young master like this, and I don't even look at myself. Huzi snorted coldly, almost not taking action. Hee, young master, you're so poor, you're pretending. Lin Tao looked at me up and down, somewhat disdainful. I feel that he is quite annoying and lacks quality. What's wrong with me being poor? He has nothing to do with you. Just one more thing, believe it or not, I'll kill you. Tiger took a step forward and prepared to take action. I quickly grabbed him, and this tiger was about to kill anyone, which was quite a headache. Huzi saw that my face didn't look good and immediately remained silent. Li Wan also felt embarrassed, so she blamed Lin Tao and said, this is my classmate, please say a few words less. Lin Tao sneered and remained silent. The atmosphere was a bit awkward next, and I quickly said goodbye to Li Wan. After finally meeting my classmates, I didn't expect it to be like this. By the way, Zhang Jiuyang, the day after tomorrow is my wedding. Remember to come over and have a wedding banquet, Li Wan said, taking out a wedding invitation from her bag and handing it to me. As soon as I heard that she was getting married, I felt a bit uncomfortable in my heart, but I still smiled and reached out to pick it up. Who hasn't had a crush in their lifetime? Youth will eventually leave us, leaving no trace in the end. When I entered the elevator, I heard an argument. I turned around and saw that Li Wan and Lin Tao were arguing. I sighed, it seems that Li Wan has not married a good man who loves her. It's a pity, but there's nothing I can do about it. What I didn't expect was that the next time we met, it would become a farewell, and Huzi's words would also become a reality. After leaving the mall, it was already dark and Lin Wan happened to send me a location. The place is not far away, and Huzi and I are planning to stop a car across the street. But just as I was passing the intersection, the hammer in my arms fell to the ground with a clang, and I quickly bent down to pick it up. But at that moment, a bus suddenly rushed out of the intersection and roared past me, almost scraping past my body. I was startled and broke out in a cold sweat. If it weren't for picking up the hammer, I would definitely have been hit and killed. Grass mud horse, no eyes. I cursed and looked towards the bus. But then I froze and a chill instantly enveloped my body. The bus was empty, with only one woman standing in the middle, looking at me through the glass. A red Qipao. Smiling eerily at me. Chapter 9. The Talisman of Human Bones. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Her body is surprisingly semi-transparent. At this moment, I seemed to fall into an ice cave in an instant, cooling from head to toe. Xia Xiaoman, surprisingly dead. I tightly grasped the hammer in my hand and picked it up. Did my grandfather save me? Did you see it? I asked Huzi without looking back. She's dead. Huzi also appeared shocked. Red-clad ghost, extremely fierce, this is what I am most worried about. The so-called evil ghost will inevitably harm people when it appears, but I didn't expect her to be the first one to harm me. It seems that Xia Xiaoman must have hated me extremely before he died, otherwise he wouldn't have been the first to come to me. I couldn't help but think of what she came to me the day before yesterday. Suddenly, I felt an inexplicable heaviness in my heart. A fresh life disappeared like this. Did I do something wrong? Young master, this woman will die soon. Why did she harm you? Huzi was somewhat worried. Hey! I let out a long sigh and looked in the direction where the bus disappeared. If I promise to help her, won't she die? I asked Huzi softly. What does her death have to do with us? Young master, we're not police, said Huzi. I know what Huzi said makes sense, but my heart still cannot help feeling heavy. After all, it is a human life. At that moment, a white BMW parked beside us, and a familiar woman's voice rang out from inside the car. Hey, isn't this the ninth young master? Mr. Yi. I looked at the person sitting in the car in surprise, not expecting to run into her here. Where are you going? I'll take you on a journey, Mr. Yi said with a smile. No need, let's take a taxi ourselves. I forced a smile on my face. Don't be polite, come up. Mr. Yi opened the car door. When I was about to say a few more polite words, Huzi didn't hesitate to get into the car. I could only follow him and sit on it, then tell Mr. Yi the address. Are you going to eat? Mr. Yi asked. Well, my friend's birthday, I said. Mr. Yi exclaimed and didn't speak again. Throughout the entire journey, I kept my head down and didn't speak. My mind was filled with the shadow of Xia Xiaoman. I noticed that Mr. Yi was constantly observing me through the mirror, as if he had something to say. Perhaps he didn't speak up when he saw that I was in a bad mood. We quickly arrived at the place, and after getting off the car, I thanked Mr. Yi. Just as I thought she was leaving, she walked into the restaurant with us, and I looked at her in surprise. I can't help but come to Lin Wan's birthday, Mr. Yi asked with a smile. I didn't expect Mr. Yi to also attend Lin Wan's birthday, which surprised me a bit. Opening the door of the private room, I was somewhat surprised to find that Lin Wan was the only one inside. When she saw us entering with Mr. Yi, she did not show any special surprise. I took out the coat I just bought and handed it to Lin Wan. Your clothes are dirty, I'll buy a new one for you, I said. Ah, little soybean milk, I knew you were the best. Lin Wan was overjoyed and happily took it over. She then wore it directly in front of me, happily spinning around in front of me twice and asking if it looked good. I smiled and said it looked good. Oh, aren't you out of money? This dress costs 2,000 yuan, Lin Wan looked at me in surprise. I was embarrassed, but Lin Wan hugged my arm and said, little soybean milk, you are so kind to me. I've decided to have a baby with you. Don't make a fuss. I quickly broke free from Lin Wan, my face burning. Mr. Yi covered his mouth and smiled, with a fleeting charm that dazzled me slightly. He quickly averted his gaze. Lin Wan didn't make any more fuss. After we sat down, Lin Wan directly asked the waiter to serve the dishes. Just us? I asked. Yes, it's just us. I exclaimed and didn't speak again. It all seemed like they had deliberately arranged it, otherwise it wouldn't have been just us. I was worried about Xia Xiaoman's situation in my heart, but I really didn't have much appetite. After taking a few bites, I was full, but the tiger ate a lot and he ate most of the dishes on the table. After Lin Wan's introduction, I learned that Mr. Ye's name is Yi Shuiyao, a very nice name. Young Master Jiu, is there something wrong? Mr. Yi clearly noticed my abnormality. Oh, it's okay, it's just that I almost got hit by a car just now, I'm a bit scared, I said. You're not injured, are you? Lin Wan rushed over. Mr. Yi, if you guessed correctly, you came to me, right? What's up? I asked directly. Yi and Lin Wan exchanged a glance, then nodded and took off a piece of white sheet-like accessory from their body, placing it on the table. This is a talisman, made of white material at an unknown time, but at this moment there is a crack on top of the talisman. Young Master Jiu, a master made me a fortune-telling talisman last night. It suddenly cracked open. Can you help me see what's going on? Mr. Yi looked at me eagerly. I frowned and hesitated. After all, the first thing I promised my grandfather was to help the Long family, but for Lin Wan's face, I couldn't help but give it. Subconsciously, as I looked at the eerie material of this talisman, I couldn't help but furrow my brows slightly because I felt a faint sense of stillness on it. This leaf is going to have an accident. I was surprised in my heart, seeing human life at stake. I couldn't bear it anymore. I sighed and had no choice but to speak up. Mr. Yi, this thing is useless. It's useless, then there shouldn't be anything wrong, right? Yi felt a little nervous. I reached out and took the talisman back in my hand, closed my eyes, and slid my hand inch by inch over the face of the talisman. My eyebrows furrowed deeper and deeper, and then I gently caressed the side of the talisman with my fingers. After a moment, I opened my eyes and a hint of coldness flashed through them. This is actually a human bone. Using human bone talismans, it's a crooked path, no wonder I feel a faint sense of stillness on it. There are many types of summoning talismans, but if it comes to the fastest effect, it is undoubtedly bone talismans made of bones. Among the bone symbols, human bones are the most ferocious. As the saying goes, using human bones as talismans and avoiding gods and ghosts means using human bones as talismans to urge luck, which has a domineering effect. Similarly, although such a domineering thing has extremely significant effects, its side effects are also extremely huge. Once it backfires, the consequences will be unimaginable. And the most pitiful deceased, using bones as symbols, will inevitably end up with a desperate fate. I didn't expect that such a beautiful woman like Mr. Yi would use such a thing, which made my impression of her plummet to the bottom. Thinking of this, I pushed the bone talisman in front of her. Mr. Yi, while people are doing things, the heavens are watching. Doing such a thing that undermines Yin virtue will bring retribution. Mr. Yi didn't expect me to suddenly change my face, and couldn't help but be slightly stunned. I stood up and said, "Huzi, let's go." Huzi didn't ask anything, said hello, and then stood up and followed me outward. Young Master Jiu, what's going on here? Mr. Yi quickly stood up. What's going on? Don't you know it yourself? I took a deep breath and stared closely at Mr. Yi. Mr. Yi shook his head. Don't you know this is a human bone? I sneered. Ah. Mr. Ye's hand trembled as the bone talisman fell onto the table. I was momentarily taken aback. It seemed that she really didn't know, which made me feel more comfortable. Who gave you the talisman? I asked. He is a master in your industry, but I don't know his name, Mr. Yi quickly replied. I don't know. I sneered at her, because I noticed that while Mr. Yi was saying these words, a gray aura suddenly appeared in the illness palace, which was exacerbating the backlash. I laughed sternly and shouted, "You're lying." The lie was exposed by me, and her face suddenly changed. Still unwilling to tell the truth. For Lin Wan's sake, I decided to give her another chance. A struggle flashed on Mr. Ye's face, and then he bit his silver teeth. I'm sorry, I can't say what I promised others, he said. I looked at her with a cold gaze and said, human bones are like talismans, which can harm the harmony of heaven and earth. There is a cycle of cause and effect, and retribution is not satisfying. Now that bone talismans crack, people will surely die. If you refuse to speak, then wait for death. After speaking, I stopped lingering and turned around to leave. Mr. Ye's face turned pale suddenly, and his body softened as he sat on the chair. Chapter 10. Heavenly Machine Scale, Heavenly Machine Scale. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Lin Wan quickly rushed up and stopped in front of me. Little soybean milk, what are you doing? Lin Wan said anxiously. Lin Wan, as a friend, I hope you make friends with caution, I said. Little soybean milk, what do you mean? Yi is always a good man. Lin Wan argued. Good people. Good people can use this thing. I had a disdainful smile on my face. Mr. Yi, whenever there's something I can't say, that cripple doesn't look like a good person to me. Lin Wan said to Mr. Yi. The cripple. I frowned and couldn't help but think of the left cripple. Mr. Yi, is his surname Zhua? I asked. Mr. Yi nodded as he saw that I already knew. Young Master Jiu, I'm sorry, you need to have integrity in your life. Don't blame me, he said. I glanced at her, nodded, and then turned my head and walked out of the room. I didn't expect that a good birthday dinner would end in this way. That night, I started having that nightmare again. The old man, covered in blood, appeared in front of me again, but his appearance seemed even weaker than before, and his body gradually became somewhat transparent. Master Zhang, why haven't you come yet? He continued to repeat that sentence, his tone even more anxious, as if it was about to dissipate at any moment. I couldn't possibly not feel anything unusual despite having this nightmare continuously. So the next morning when I woke up, I lay in bed and started thinking about this question. This old man appeared in my dreams several times and was able to call out my name, obviously having some connection with my family. What the hell is going on here? When I was feeling annoyed, my phone pushed a news message that caught my attention. A commuter bus in this city had a car accident last night. After colliding with pedestrians, it collided with a large tree, causing 1 death and 7 injuries. The driver was seriously injured and admitted to the hospital. I'll zoom in on the picture and see if it's the bus that almost killed me last night. It seems that Xie Xiaoman's ghost is indeed causing trouble. This made my originally complex mood even heavier. Xie Xiaoman didn't kill me yesterday, so he definitely won't give up. Maybe he will come back to me again someday. Just as I was having a headache, I suddenly heard the startled cry of the tiger. Young master, come over quickly, there's an accident. I quickly rushed from the room to the front bunk and found Huzi standing in front of my grandfather's tablet, staring blankly. I followed his gaze and was also stunned on the spot. Because there was a small white snake coiled in front of my grandfather's plaque. Seeing this snake, my face instantly turned ugly. Young master, is this the snake I killed? Huzi's voice was somewhat solemn. Huzi's personality is fierce, but this time he clearly felt abnormal, otherwise his personality would definitely be nailed to death with a single blow. People with some common sense know that pure white snake species are very rare, and the likelihood of 2 snakes appearing together is very low. Now there are 2 snakes appearing at the same time, and it's hard not to think too much. What worries me the most is, why is this snake coiled on Grandpa's plaque? Huzi and I exchanged a glance and walked towards the previous coffin. We both froze when we opened the lid. There was no body of the white snake in the coffin, but we could see clearly at the time that the tiger had nailed the snake's head and shed some snake blood. But now there is no trace inside the coffin, as if it has never appeared before. Huzi and I turned our heads and looked at the white snake, which was the thickness of our thumb. This cold-blooded beast was holding its head high and motionless, but its eyes were fixed on us. Young master, is it that dirty thing? Huzi asked. A cold sweat broke out in my palms, and I took a deep breath as I walked up, staring intently at the white snake. The white snake spat out its message and slowly wriggled on my grandfather's tablet. The words on the tablet were exposed, and I was momentarily stunned when I looked at them. Grandpa's plaque is made of Nanmo wood and engraved with gold paint. Even if it is left for 10 or 20 years, it will not change color, but the gold paint in front of me is actually much dimmer. Young master, what's going on? Huzi also noticed something unusual. I frowned, and after a moment, my color suddenly changed. "This snake is devouring Grandpa's incense and damaging my Zhang family's luck," I exclaimed in surprise. "Damn it!" Huzi exclaimed angrily. Upon hearing these words, I quickly reached out to stop Huzi's next words, and then turned my head to look at Huzi solemnly. "Huzi, from today on, without my orders, you are not allowed to harm it." "But young master, it's causing trouble to fourth master." "In case." Tiger Z retorted to me for the first time. I sighed and slowly picked up 3 incense sticks from the side and inserted them into the incense burner. The green cigarette curled up and gradually drifted into the nose of the white snake, which immediately made the beast feel much more energetic. "Sure enough, you're playing tricks," I frowned. "Young master, we can't let this beast stay here all the time." Huzi gritted his teeth and pointed at the white snake. "I'll send it back to the west now." "Don't mess around, it's not that simple." I carefully stared at the white snake, and this thing was also staring at me. Its eyes were the size of black sesame seeds, but I could feel its malice towards me. After a while, I sighed. "Although I don't know what happened to you, I can probably guess a little bit that this has something to do with our Zhang family, right?" I said. The white snake spat out its message again and twisted its body violently, moving a few times. Now I am even more certain about my guess in my heart. It seems that it is indeed related to my Zhang family. Since your spirit is still there, my friend accidentally released you, proving that your life should not be lost. This is fate, I believe, and you must also acknowledge it. After speaking, I turned my head and walked to the wooden cabinet next to me. After hesitating for a moment, I opened the third box and took out a small scale from inside. "Young master, what are you doing?" "It's just a beast." Huzi looked at me with a surprised expression as I took out the small scale. I waved my hand and said, "Huzi, remember, all living beings are equal, and any life has the right to live. Besides, this by family was nailed to a stone monument by my grandfather and suffered for hundreds of years. My Zhang family owes it. But you can't use the scale recklessly this day, it will harm you." Huzi looked anxious. "Stop talking, I have already made a decision." I stopped the tiger from continuing to speak and walked up to the white snake, staring at it. The little beast was staring closely at the Tianji scale in my hand. "Since it was my grandfather Zhang who caused harm to you, as his descendant, I am willing to take responsibility. I know you hold grudges in your heart, but I cannot let you persecute my grandfather's soul." I raised the small scale in my hand and said, "This is the Tianji scale passed down by the Zhang family. It can measure yin and yang, measure life and death, measure heaven and earth, and change the world. Today, I made an exception and used it to weigh you, build a yin and yang mansion, and erect an incense and fire monument. I wonder if you would like it." Hiss. The white snake made a sound in its mouth for the first time, with suspicion and vigilance in its eyes. Huzi snorted coldly, "I don't know what's good or bad about it. This is the blessing you cultivated in your previous life." I smiled and continued speaking to the white snake, "His words are rough and not rough. Only by weighing your destiny can you see yin and yang. It's better for you to share incense and fire 10 times, which can also be considered as a sin to redeem my grandfather. If you agree, climb down from the tablet." After speaking, I stopped speaking and waited for this beast to make a decision. Huzi saw that the white snake was unwilling to come down for a long time, and finally couldn't help it. With a swish, he pulled out a knife flower. "Little beast, my young master treats you sincerely, but you don't know what to do. Then I'll kill you again. If you come out again, I'll kill you again until you're completely scared." Huzi raised his sword and cut, and I quickly grabbed his hand. "Young master, what are you talking to this beast? Kill it and then kill it, I'm afraid it won't succeed." Huzi was a little anxious. While they were deadlocked, a voice rang out of the door. "Little soybean milk, have you finished your meal yet?" I turned my head and saw that Lin Wan had come over, wearing the new clothes I bought for her yesterday. When I saw her, she smiled and turned around. "Does it look good?" she asked. "It looks good," I said. She smiled happily and immediately noticed the white snake on her grandfather's plaque, then looked at me and Huzi. I didn't hide anything, so I told the story just now. Lin Wan was suddenly surprised and looked at the Tianji scale in my hand, her eyes full of curiosity. "It's really fake, this thing is so amazing," Lin Wan asked in surprise. "Humph, with long hair and short knowledge, this is a precious treasure passed down from the young master's family. It's hard to find a scale for 1,000 gold coins. I don't know how many people begged the fourth master to give a scale, but unfortunately, this little beast doesn't know what's valuable." Huzi hummed. "Little soybean milk, is it really so powerful?" Lin Wan obviously didn't believe in the tiger, so she had to ask me. I smiled proudly and said, although Huzi may exaggerate, he is still very close. Lin Wan didn't believe Huzi but trusted me very much. Upon hearing my words, she immediately turned her head to look at the white snake. "You are so ungrateful. Don't hurry down and let my little soybean milk weigh." It's strange to say that when Lin Wan said this, the little white snake actually climbed down from the plaque. I was overjoyed and quickly walked forward. In order to avoid the snake suddenly biting me, I even wore a pair of leather gloves and put down the small scale. The white snake climbed up. "Are you really out of control?" Huzi muttered as he looked at Lin Wan. Lin Wan smiled arrogantly, unwilling to be outdone, and Huzi immediately glared angrily again. I ignored the two of them, looked at the time, gently moved the weight, and the Tianji scale slowly turned before stopping for a moment. "Huzi, abacus." Huzi quickly brought an abacus over, and I bent my fingers and played it repeatedly, quickly calculating. The heavenly machine scale calculates twice, and it is known that the destiny of heaven is not inferior to 1 millimeter. The result came out quickly, and I asked Huzi to bring the notebook. The Enmu mansion is 1 foot 6 inches and 9 millimeters in size, with a wooden tablet of 1 foot and a half minutes. I quickly said the result of my own weighing. "I've all remembered the young master," Tiger said. I nodded and said, "Let's start building tonight." As I spoke, my eyes turned black and I gasped heavily, feeling an indescribable pain in my body. "Young master, are you okay? Just say this thing can't be used indiscriminately." Huzi quickly poured me a glass of water. "It's okay, if you weigh the skin but not the bones, there won't be much backlash," I laughed. "Young master, is this snake the woman in white?" Huzi's face was serious. I shook my head and said, "I'm not sure, it shouldn't be." "No, where did the woman in white go?" Huzi's face was full of concern. "I don't know, what worries me more now is my grandfather." "Fourth master, what's wrong with fourth master?" Huzi asked urgently. "I can't say it either, I always feel like there's a problem. It happened to be Grandpa's 7th birthday today, and I want to go down and take a look at it at night."